Learn everything that is good from others, but bring it in, and in your own way absorb it. Do not become others. Okay, so that is a direct quote from Swami Vivekananda, and, believe it or not, it was the exact prompt for a 10-mark question in the 2024 UPSC General Studies Paper 4 Ethics exam. It sounds absolutely profound on paper, right? But put yourself in that exam hall. How do you realistically unpack this massive philosophical idea into a concrete, high-scoring answer without just rambling?
Well, you're definitely not alone there. That is the exact dilemma thousands of aspirants face this year. It is so easy to read Vivekananda and just nod along, but applying his words to modern administrative friction, that's where the real challenge lies.
Welcome everyone to this explainer on Ethical Point. Today we're taking a deep dive into philosophical governance. We're going to figure out how an aspiring civil servant in India has to navigate this really delicate balance between global integration on one hand and local authenticity on the other. By the end of this explainer, you won't just understand this philosophy conceptually, you're going to know exactly how to structure it and write about it for your mains.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll unpack Vivekananda's core philosophy. Second, we'll look at the constitutional evidence. Third, we're diving into the jam Trinity reality. Fourth, escaping information cocoons. And finally, number 5, we'll give you a winning UPSC Mains strategy. Let's just jump right in.
Mentor, starting with Section 1, Vivekananda's core philosophy, rooted openness. Skeptic. Let's start right at the foundation. In this hyper-connected world we live in, where we are literally bombarded by global trends, Western technologies, and international policy models 24/7, what did Vivekananda practically mean by balancing all this openness with our own authenticity?
Best way to look at this is to map out the mind of an ideal civil servant. As you can see mapped out here, one absolutely crucial trait is the humility to accept wisdom from others. As an administrator, you cannot afford to have a closed mind. If, say, a Scandinavian country has a brilliant waste management system, you need the humility to study it. But, and this is the whole crux of Vivekananda's message, you also need practical wisdom, or prudence. You must adapt those imported ideas to local realities. You need integrity and authenticity to preserve your cultural identity and the self-confidence to avoid losing yourself in blind imitation.
Let's actually pause for a quick layman's definition here. The concept we are really circling around is selective adaptation. In plain English, it means assimilating external knowledge while strictly maintaining your own authenticity and originality. It is the complete opposite of mechanical, blind imitation. Think of it like this. You take the seed of an idea from somewhere else, but you plant it in local soil and you let it grow according to the local climate. Section 2. The constitutional evidence. Okay, I get the theory of selective adaptation. It sounds fantastic in an ethics textbook. But does this philosophy actually exist in Indian policy? Like, can we prove that the Indian state actually does this in practice?
Absolutely we can. You don't need to look any further than the foundational document of our democracy, the Indian Constitution itself. The framers of the Constitution were literally the ultimate practitioners of Vivekananda's advice.
Let's take another quick layman's pause to define secularism, just broadly speaking. At its core, secularism is simply an interpretation of the relationship between the state and religion. But how that relationship is actually tailored, that depends entirely on specific cultural and historical circumstances.
And this brilliantly illustrates our point. See, when India adopted secularism, we didn't just mechanically copy-paste from the West. Western secularism is based on a strict, watertight separation of church and state. The state basically ignores religion entirely. But India has this deeply pluralistic spiritual fabric. It's woven into everyday life. So we selectively adapted it into Indian secularism, which is based on the ancient ideal of Sarva Dharma Sambhava, meaning equal respect for all religions. The state doesn't ignore religion, it supports all religions equally. We learned from the West, sure, but we absorbed it completely in our own way.
Let's try another one. Let's define socialism. Broadly, it's an economic and political system that aims to balance collective welfare with individual rights, usually through some kind of state intervention.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. So, global socialism, like the standard international models we saw in the Soviet Union or early communist China, those were heavily centralized. They relied on very rigid state command economies.
Exactly. Hit the nail on the head. If we had blindly imitated them, we would have completely lost our democratic soul. Instead, India engaged in creative adaptation. Indian socialism became this democratic, welfare-oriented mixed economy. We respected private enterprise, but we ensured the state still stepped in to uplift the marginalized. We maintained our cultural roots and our democratic ethos instead of just copying someone else's state command model.
Okay, using the Constitution is a brilliant way to show historical context. But what about right now? As an aspiring IAS officer, I am going to be dealing with modern administrative dilemmas, specifically technology. I mean, let's be real. Most of us studying for this exam are glued to a smartphone screen for like 12 hours a day. So how does Vivekananda's advice apply to modern digital governance?
That is the perfect pivot. Let's look at Section 3, the Jam Trinity Reality, Grassroots Tech, because this is the ultimate modern case study of this philosophy in action today.
So let's dive into this. When the digital revolution kicked off, developed nations created some truly fantastic digital service models. India looked at those global best practices, and we definitely learned from them. But we didn't just buy their software off the shelf and call it a day. We engaged in a creative synthesis to solve a uniquely Indian problem: our massive unbanked populations and the huge middleman leakages in welfare distribution.
Right, so instead of just copying Western digital banking apps, we built the whole Jam Trinity: Jan bank accounts, linked to Aadhaar biometric identity, entirely accessible via mobile phones.
Precisely. We took the universal concept of digital proficiency and fused it with our own local realities to actually achieve grassroots financial inclusion. That right there is selective adaptation. That is learning without becoming the other.
Moving into Section 4, Escaping Information Cocoons. This really makes me wonder about the dark side of all this. What happens if a society, or even a single civil servant, fails to do this? Like, what is the actual danger of just copying global digital trends without applying that critical, creative adaptation?
Well, the danger is profound. If you just mechanically imitate the digital lifestyles and algorithms of prominent global cultures, you fall straight into echo chambers and information cocoons. These are basically environments of pure intellectual stagnation, where you only ever encounter beliefs that perfectly coincide with your own. For a civil servant, losing touch with the beautifully diverse, contradictory reality of India just because you're trapped in some imported digital echo chamber, that is fatal to good governance. So, here is the crucial point you have to remember. True growth only comes from creative adaptation. By actively processing external knowledge through the lens of Indian realities, you avoid that intellectual stagnation. You build what we call intellectual sovereignty, meaning you are independent in your thought, ethical in your approach, and deeply rooted in your own culture, even while you're utilizing the most advanced global tools available.
All right, Section 5, UPSC Mains Strategy. This has been an amazing conceptual journey, but let's get down to brass tacks. How do we package this entire discussion into a high-scoring 10-marker for GS Paper 4?
Okay, let's break down the winning formula and see how we can build the perfect answer structure for your exam. For your introduction, don't just lazily repeat the quote, define its core essence: selective adaptation. Explain that it means assimilating global wisdom while preserving authenticity. For the body paragraph, you need hard constitutional evidence. Contrast Western secularism with Sarva Dharma Sanpav and global centralized socialism with Indian democratic socialism. This proves to the examiner that you truly understand philosophy in action. Then, for your example, bring it right up to the present day. Cite the Jam Trinity as the perfect model of adapting global tech to solve grassroots leakages. And finally, for your way forward or conclusion, drop the power keyword intellectual sovereignty. Conclude that overcoming modern pitfalls like information cocoons absolutely requires us to maintain our intellectual independence rather than falling into mechanical imitation.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question that goes way beyond the exam paper. It cuts straight to your daily life as an aspirant. Are you practicing true intellectual sovereignty in your own UPSC preparation right now? Or are you simply imitating the strategies, the notes, and the echo chambers of the thousands of others around you? To stand out, you absolutely must learn from the toppers, yes, but you must absorb that knowledge in your own way. Cultivate your own ethical compass. Thank you so much for joining us on Ethical Point, and keep striving for that sovereignty.